And just what I'm doing, I'm reading from the endorsements on the back of their wonderful book here. And Dan also draws upon recognized psychic talent and amplifies it with his own vision, foresight, and oratory skills. It did say literary here, but notice how I quickly transposed that. The book is recommended reading. Dan is recommended listening for those seeking hope, direction, and spiritual insight. It is my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, Dan Chesbourgh.
I'm almost as old as the sanctuary, which is kind of fun. I've come here since, gosh, the early 80s, I think it was. And this church has changed so much over the years. I walked into the sanctuary today, saw this beautiful decoration, because there had been things all over the walls at one time, and different, groups come and go, and it's been really great. That you can change and survive is beautiful, because that's what it's all about. You've got a shape that you've got to change in. It's like one of these. All right, you change inside, and that reflects on the outside. So what's changing on the inside here is reflecting on the outside, which is really great. And I'm so delighted you took your shoes off. I don't like wearing shoes, and I had a pair of shoes and I felt like a duck, walking around here. So I was, and of course it's so terribly warm today. I listened to these introductions and I said, who is this guy? Because I'm the one who changes the cat pan at home. So, that's my notoriety. Thinking about what to share with you today. Well, there are many kinds of things I want to go to, and things that I think are going to be helpful. One of the things that I want to share with you, it's Paul, right? Peter, okay. Peter, Paul, you know how that is. Okay. Raymond Moody, who wrote the book Life After Life. I don't know how well you know that particular work, because it's pretty old out back there. After he wrote that book, he wrote one called Laugh After Laugh. And it was all the research about laughter and what it does for the body, because the body can't do two things at one time. You're either sick or happy. And as a child, I was very sick for many, many years. So I was about 7. And filled me full of penicillin. Now all my grandkids are allergic to penicillin and all that kind of malarkey. Well, my Aunt Helen at one time gave me a crank-up RCA Victrola that used to play 78s. You remember these. Well, I remembered I had on this bathrobe that was blue and white and a little cord thing. And one of the records on the Victrola was called Brazil. And I put that on and I cranked up the thing and dropped the needle down, and it's like, Brazil, la da 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 da. And I'm dancing, and I thought, wait a minute, when I'm dancing, I'm not sick. I'll dance. Well, Dr. Moody, unfortunately, his second book, Laugh After Laugh, didn't really sell very well. He got very depressed. I think he should have read his book. But it was ahead of its time, really, unfortunately, but it was. And one of the things the Essenes used to use in their healing in the old days in ancient Israel was body movement, laughter, all of those things to get the energy to move and to dispel, because the body has to be the host to only one master, and it's either going to be dis-ease or ease. I'd rather have ease, So thanks for taking off the shoes and sharing the laughs, It's one of my favorites. There's a quote in, I think it's Matthew. It says, "Be ye perfect, what is it now? It goes, be ye perfect like your Father in heaven is perfect." I thought, oh, terrific. All right, so now I've got the 10 Commandments to obey. I've got to love my brother and sister like myself, and I've got to be perfect. That's a tall order. I thought, well, all right, well, what does this mean? I mean, God is perfection, so I have to be like a God in order to fulfill this wonderful task. Well, when you think about the possibilities that you already are made of God, then you have within you the idea of perfection. However, we collectively say amongst ourselves when we're having coffee and sitting out in the corners and whatnot, well, God, nobody's perfect. Well, how can that be? If you're made of God, and you are, including the critters that live in your eyelashes, that's called perfection. The source of where I'm coming from this morning comes from a friend of mine by the name of Tom Sawyer, and not Mark Twain's friend. This is a guy who had a very profound death experience back on May 23rd, 1978. And for 40 years, like Edgar Casey, he did a lot of phenomenal works, including preventing nuclear war on several occasions, preventing the assassination of the Dalai Lama on at least 2 occasions that I'm aware of. If he found out you had lung cancer, he would ask God's permission to intercede. He would take that into his body, cough up blood for 2 or 3 days. You would walk out of the hospital cancer-free. So when he was 33 years old, he was under a pickup truck full of firewood. And he was showing his very young boys the proper way to change a transmission leak or something like that. And then the truck went boom, boom. Well, an infant could not have survived this devastation, crush, you know. He was an Olympic caliber athlete. He had trained to do bike racing in the Mexican Olympics and all that. So he was quite a stalwart chap. And yet when you've got a truck full of firewood sitting on your chest, you don't have too much room to go. Nobody knew what to do to get him out of there. Our time, he was dead 15 minutes. From anyone's point of view, looking at that, this man is dead. There is just no way he's going to survive this, okay? So anyway, he didn't believe in God, thought Jesus was a fairy tale at this point. So the first thing he encountered was total blackness, which we call the void, which implies an emptiness, but it's actually the fullness of God, which is unconditional love, things that some of us were born out of, but sometimes don't quite comprehend. Then what appeared out of this void was a point of light. He said the most beautiful light he'd ever seen in his life. And that light then became like a tunnel. And what he realized as he was staring at this was, oh, there is a God. He got that far. But it was that the void is God. The point is God separating itself from itself, creating light. Then the tunnel was also an extension of this light. So he realized that there was only God, and because there was God, the point, the tunnel, and the void, there's also only good. And so when you look at God being perfection, as Jesus had said in this parable, if he even said it, is the idea that perfection is unconditional love. Unconditional love is equal to your free will. Your free will is equal to total knowledge and total wisdom. So you have within you perfection. You have everything you need within you to be a master of yourself. However, some of you will not love yourselves no matter what kind of therapy you've been through or whatnot. Even laughter will help for a few instants, and then you revert back to the old idea. You have within you the ability to totally remember what it is like to be with that point of light. However, the dilemma with that would be, if you went there, you would have to do it without any reservation at all, but you would then spontaneously explode. So please don't, okay? Think about it, but don't go there. If that happened in this room, you'd see a brilliant white light. It would look blue to your eyes, a trace of amount of ammonia in the air, and on this carpet would be some grayish yellow powder. It's called gamma ash residue. It's what happens with a supernova. All right, so you have within you the ability to remember what it was like to be in God before there was light, because you were God's imagination, if you want to think of it that way. Now, from that point of light on, everything is creation and evolution, and we're also a part of that. Since we're part mammal and all that, we're in that stage of evolution. That also means that you are always and always have been part of the perfection. So Jesus perhaps was simply reminding those who were there, you know, God is perfect. Be ye there also perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect, or your mother. Okay? So it's an idea. You get to make a choice. It's yes or no. You know, when it comes to love, it's yes or no. It's not somewhere in between. So in effect, you have nothing to lose. You have everything to gain. By choosing perfection and acknowledging that you are perfect, which our culture basically says, well, nobody's perfect. You're going against the grain of your society, for one thing. Your church is telling you not to be selfish with a capital S, because that's not a smart thing to be. And yet, if you're not selfish, you know, you're not going to get too far with this. The other dilemma is this. A lot of you are wonderful at giving and helping others, but not so easy on the receiving end. When it comes time for somebody wanting to give you back, say, oh, no, I'm fine. Well, you see, God operates through us in a matrix of give and take, karma, right? Big bang, big crunch, you know, cause and effect and all that. So if you're only giving and you're not allowing yourself to receive, it's not going to work. The energy works like this. Somebody sees me and says, may I offer you chicken soup? And they didn't ask my permission, really. They're just going to give it to me. I say, oh, okay, what can I do for you? Oh, nothing, I'm fine. So the energy can't go back. You can't receive. You won't receive. But you're denying them their ability to love as you love them to come back. And we're to love one another. Well, if you're holding on to a stone, how can I give you a loaf of bread? So the object here is to love yourself as God does. Recognize that you are perfect no matter what condition or shape you're in this particular situation in life. You have the ability to give and to receive in order to make the whole system work. God will use you as a conduit so that you can do it. Your worst enemy becomes your benefactor if you're willing to receive. So it's a simple gesture you get to make. The very next time anybody wants to reciprocate in what you've offered to give and they've allowed, and now they're saying, and what can I do for you? It doesn't matter what it is. That it is, it's all energy, it's all God, it's all good, and it's perfect. I had a dream a few months ago, which was really kind of interesting. I'd like to share with you. I was somewhere in time and space, or whatever that is. There was a bridge that went for me like this, and all these people were walking over the bridge, including Hillary Clinton. She was in my dream. I don't know where she was going, but probably out on one of her missions, you know. And I'm watching this, and it looked like sort of New York City in the background, you know, after 9/11 and all that kind of thing. So anyway, I'm now getting a voice coming at me, and it says, there's only perfection. And I'm thinking back to it. I'm not verbalizing. I'm thinking, what are you talking about? There's only perfection. You mean, it's a yes, there is only perfection. If there's only God, and there's only good, and God is perfect, then everything that is made of God, which is everything you can see and not see, is perfect. And then I'm thinking, well, what about, and what about? And then the voice came back and said, now, you've got to consider that you're in a matrix of flesh and bone and all that, that basically is limited by a few senses. There are other mammals who can far surpass your sense of smell and sight. So you're limited by that. You're also limited by the fact that you believe that time exists. But if there's only God, and God is only now, there is no time. We invented time, you know, to say, well, it was so many moons between here and here, and therefore. Well, in actuality, in terms of the calendar, it's been changed about 9 times. You know, somebody asked me yesterday, well, what about this 2012 thing? I said, well, do we look at the Christian calendar before or after it was changed, the Muslim calendar, the Chinese calendar, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, we could have already had 2012, you know, 20 years ago. Who knows? I'm planning to have a party the next day just in case, or not. Whatever the case may be. You're all invited, by the way. So, you know, we've got this interesting thing about having no time, and now there's also no space. All right, if there's only God, there all is the isness of now, and so everything that is existing is evolving from the point of creation, but that is all God becoming. Now, we have an interesting thing that happened about, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. Scientists around the world set up labs in Geneva, Switzerland, and Los Alamos and whatever, and discovered an energy called neutrinos. They'd done a math about this, and it speculated that that stuff existed, but you can't see it, it's invisible, so how do you know it exists? Well, they set up these labs with solutions of heavy water, and then, of course, what you might not know is that neutrinos have a consciousness. They have the ability to choose where they're going to do their thing. So they chose to skate into this heavy water, allowing themselves now to be discovered, not just mathematical speculation, but they were discovered. When they examined neutrinos, they found they have no death cycle. All right? They constantly, from our point of view, reincarnate. The whole universe is constantly rebirthing itself. All right? Just like this church is reinventing itself all the time. Right? So there's no death cycle. Now, what's interesting about this is when I was a kid in school, we had something called the unified field theory. It was a speculation that this stuff existed. Well, since they discovered neutrinos, they no longer have it as a theory, it's a reality. So the unified field is neutrinos. The energy is replete throughout the universe is, which we know now there are many, there's not just ours. So it's the omniverse is neutrinos. Now what Tom Sawyer from his death experience realized when he became one with God and had access to total knowledge is that neutrinos' foundation is unconditional love. It's God. There is no death. We change. You can't stay in these spacesuits forever. After 21, it's downhill. And after 40, it really goes fast. You know? So we're in this perfection constantly, but ignorant of it because no one's really told us this before or whatever, or we don't choose to believe it. We're unconditional love, walking around, dealing with one another, encouraged to love our neighbor, follow the 10 Commandments, and honor God's perfection. Well, now I've spoiled the game for you. You're perfect. Get over it. You go home and look in the mirror. I don't care what stage you're in life. You're absolutely perfect. If you wanted to change tomorrow totally, that's your new perfection. Think about your whole life. Now, every one of you in this room chose to be here in this incarnation, whether you want to believe this or not. So from your last incarnation to this one, you made decisions.